talk about today is greens, the G part of the G bombs. And I've taken two bunches, one of kale and one of collard greens, my most favorite, and got those ready to go in the pan. And with greens, a wonderful way to make them heartier and healthier is to add red onion or any kind of onion, garlic, minced garlic or diced garlic, and I like jalapeno and red pepper. And then I wanted to add a vegetable, a green veggie. And what my ultimate goal is, half the plate will be greens and half the plate will be starchy. So we made our sweet potato, which was a big sweet potato, into little chunks that we'll put in the air fryer. So half our plate will be potatoes, sweet potatoes, and half our plate will be greens. So we'll just flop those in the pan. I'll put all the greens and the onion on the bottom. And then we'll just put the asparagus on top toward the end of the cooking so it stays firm, slightly firm. So I'm thinking one bunch of greens per person when we're going to have half our plate greens. And this half 50-50 plate comes from Dr. John McDougall, and he feels it's a really good way to lose weight and to have great health. If we have half of our plate dark leafy greens and green veggies and half of our plate either potatoes or grain or beans or lentils. Look how pretty that is. And then we'll throw in the garlic, which I'll mix in as I stir it. And we'll keep the asparagus to add at the end. So all I do now is put in a couple of tablespoons. I kind of count to 4 of water. And then we'll turn that on.
Well, you're not going to turn it on yet, right?
I won't turn it on yet, but I want to cook it toward the end of the call so people can see it. And we'll throw the potatoes in the air fryer and lunch will be ready.
The whole G-BOMB approach. So Dr. Fuhrman put this acronym together as what he feels are the most essential foods to eat every day if we want to really be healthy for longevity and
Disease prevention.
And freedom from pain. So it's the G-BOMB. It's greens, beans, onion, mushrooms, berries, and this will all be in the email to you, and seeds. And so this week we're doing greens. And so greens, I think it's appropriate that they're first because they are definitely the highest nutrient dense food pretty much on the planet. And when we talk about nutrient density, it's the micronutrients, it's the antioxidants, the vitamins, the minerals, all the things that our bodies need for the systems to work properly. And so that's what, so the greens are the highest density of micronutrients per calorie. And what's interesting is that most of the calories in greens come from protein. So many people say, well, gosh, you're not eating meat. Where are you going to get your protein? Every plant has protein in it. Not to the extent that meat does. Meat's like 22% protein, but the beans are 22% protein. Quinoa is 22% protein. You know, there are plants that have as much protein as animal, but every plant has protein in it. greens, zucchini, potatoes. There's protein in it, and that's what contributes to some of the calorie content. Yeah, so the other thing is that the cruciferous vegetables, so that's kale, collards, I'm not sure that, I don't think they're cruciferous.
They may not be.
They may
I'm
not be,
sure.
but yeah, kale,
Cabbage,
cabbage,
broccoli,
Brussels sprouts. I think there's another one I can't remember, but the cruciferous. Oh, cauliflower. Thank you, Sheila. Yeah. What there's a nutrient in them that when we cut them or chew them, when the cells get broken, it creates a nutrient that isn't there for the plant, but that really serves us. It's one of the highest cancer preventing nutrients of all the nutrients in plants, all the phytonutrients. So that's interesting. So you'll hear him sometimes talk about chopping your kale real finely or really chew it really well, because when it sits for a little while after it's been chopped, it increases the amount of this nutrient. So that's kind of a fascinating fact about cruciferous plants and chopping them, the food prep.
Would that include blending?
Yeah, yeah. So in our smoothies, I see that's really great because we blend them and then it creates this, what it's called is a isothiocyanate, or ITC for short. But yeah, it's really a powerful anti-cancer drug. You see, what's interesting is that we all have genes in our cells that will create cancer, but they aren't dominant genes. You know, we have genes in our cells that are responsible for the color of our eyes, and so those are always on. That means we're always going to have this color eye. But 90% of our genes are not turned on. They're there to respond in a way depending on what the environment is like. So as the body's developing, the environment changes, and what one cell, an undifferentiated cell, turns into a liver cell because of the environment it's in. Another one turns into a kidney cell. And what's happening as a fetus develops is that the environment around these cells is changing, and that turns on and turns off different genes so it knows how to express.
Amazing.
It's so amazing.
Yeah.
And so it expresses as a liver cell, as an optical nerve cell, as a, and that's all depending on the environment it's in. What happens when a cell becomes cancerous is that the environment it's in creates a situation. This is one way that they describe it. It feels like it loses connection with the whole. And so this cell loses connection with the whole, which is usually because of levels of toxicity in our bodies. And survival is all about reproduction. It's seen all through nature. If animals are threatened, they often try to reproduce because they know they're going to die. If they have offspring, maybe they will survive. And they see this in our cells of our bodies as well. So when things get really toxic, the cell goes, oh my gosh, I better start multiplying. And it turns on these genes that we call cancer genes. But just because those genes are there doesn't mean we'll get cancer. It has everything to do with the environment we're in. So these isothiocyanates influence the environment that our cells are in a way that it keeps those genes turned on. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, and so that gives you a reason, or gives me a reason, even more understanding, deeper understanding why whole food plant-based is so effective, because it creates this environment of health that our genes can flourish in.
Yeah. So there are two sides to that equation also. Eat the whole food plant-based for all of the nutrients and everything our bodies need to function well, and eat organic, unprocessed. to avoid all the stuff that for some reason we've added to our food supply that isn't very healthy.
Yeah, for sure.
The herbicides, the pesticides, the artificial flavorings, the artificial sweeteners, all of these things that have been shown to create disease and inflammation. And we keep pumping them into our food supply. So we want to eat the clean stuff and leave out the unclean stuff.